All right, hope everybody's doing well today. I want to welcome everybody to the Unimpressed Podcast. And today we have comedian Gary Cargal on the Unimpressed Podcast. And Gary has done the show before when we were in Nashville, when we were mobile and starting out with Mr. Matt Wonderly at the Wing Place. What was that wing place down there in Nashville?
Party Foul.
Party Foul.
Party Foul. We had Carolyn the Baptist and my son Kirby with us.
That's right, I remember that.
That's right. We had some really good chicken, best I remember.
Yeah, the chicken was pretty good. Do you eat some chicken, Gary?
I've been known to eat some fowl.
Really? What is your Gary? Now I know you do a lot of cooking videos and so forth. So, what's your favorite food?
The best place for food's in my mouth. I think if I got to pick one, barbecue.
Barbecue.
But I love some Mexican food, and I love some Chinese, and I love some country food, chicken fried steak, that sort of thing. I mean, I don't get much of it. You know, I married a Yankee girl.
I don't know if I consider Minneapolis. Minnesota. I don't consider Minnesota a Yankee.
Well, them folks where I grew up did.
Oh, they did? Well,
yeah. Everything north of Kentucky, right there at the Ohio River, everything north of that, Yankee territory.
Oh, okay.
Not that matters any. I mean, but that was listen, I'm giving my age, but when I was a kid, that was a big thing that there was Yankees and there was us, Southerners.
Mm-hmm. Stereotype.
And they're still big around some people.
I have a different ideology about that.
Okay.
What do you think that is?
That there is no difference between people.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
I mean, I feel the same way because I've seen America.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the world so much as I've seen America. There's more difference in the city girl and the country boy.
Yeah.
Than there is if that state happens to be Minnesota or Alabama.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I had Dr. Melissa Malanik on the show. She's a clinical psychologist, and we were talking about people and stereotypes. She's from the north as well, and Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh was. I think people have the same sensitivities, right? But I will say this: there is a percentage makeup on what that person is. But when they're born, they still have similar sensitivities to everybody that comes into this world, right? And I think somewhat you're driven environmentally, and that percentage makeup, of who you are going to respond to things a little differently. But I think that your environment drives you down the road and creates who you become in life. It's just like the conversation we had the other day. I don't see why people don't recognize that and why we still have such strong stereotypes.
I think it's as simple as when you get up in the morning and you go pick out something to wear that day, you're going to decide right then when you're going through your wardrobe and your makeup and your hair, when you're getting dressed for the day, I think that's when you decide who you're going to be that day. And as far as the whole Yankee stereotype, Joe Namath really kicked the door in on that for us down in Alabama. When he came down from Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania, Joe came and played for Alabama. And, of course, everything else is past Joe Namath at Alabama's pretty good history, Mm-hmm. And I really think that the sports people are great in. That's why I love sports. It's a great influence. Hank Aaron did a lot for the race cultures, Mm-hmm. I loved Hank Aaron. I was pulling for him to break Babe Ruth's record, and I remember when that was a big deal around the South.
When you say South or North, the North is just as bad. It's like they have
or worse, according to who you ask.
Well, they have a preconception of what Southern people are like.
Exactly, because I think, and we watched them the other night. We were just chilling out down here in the luxury suite at Bang Productions. It was nice enough. But we're watching what I think gave the Southerners to the rest of the world a conception that we were all idiots. Mm-hmm. And I think that the Beverly Hillbillies had a lot to do with that.
Hollywood has never done the South right. In my opinion, they've never really hit it on the head per se, and I don't know if they don't want to present that narrative or whatever it is, but I've never seen anything that really emulates the South to a T.
Well, no, not to a T. I got one.
Yeah.
Still Magnolias.
Okay.
Perhaps fried green tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe. Mm-hmm. Perhaps. Those two. That's no
Let's
good.
look at Still Magnolias, right? Still Magnolias. And yeah, it was a big Southern movie, but I want to look at the cast. So you had Dolly Parton, right? She was in the movie. You had Sally Field. Where was Sally Field from?
God, I don't know. Burt Reynolds picked her up just outside Arkansas there in Smokey and the Bandit.
Is that where he's picked up? Where does she say she's from? Now, Sally is born and raised. Where was she born and raised? It says Pasadena, California.
Okay.
All right, so Sally wasn't a Southern girl. Dolly was a Southern girl. Shirley MacLaine, let's see what she's Richmond, Virginia.
Okay, well, that's kind of...
Okay. Daryl Hannah, Chicago. She's not a Southern girl.
I never once held that against her. She's beautiful.
Olympia Dukakis, New York City. She was in there. And then Julia Roberts.
I'm pretty sure she's a Georgia girl.
Yes, Smyrna, Georgia. Julia Roberts, Smyrna, Georgia. So you had two Southern girls, real Southern girls, and a half Southern girl in Richmond.
Well, I think Richmond's Southern. I mean, everything north of that's not. Yeah. But Richmond.
To emulate a Southern movie, and still Magnolias was your go-to.
Well, you got one that sums it up any better and still...
I don't think there is one.
I don't either.
Because I've tried to make them.
There was that one in the Garden of Good Needle that they shot in Savannah. That was pretty close, but I don't think it didn't never get the views.
Kevin Spacey, right?
Still Magnolias got. But it was pretty spot on about Southern culture, I think.
Your go-to, and you're talking about the South, I think somewhat we represent a Southern voice. And where do we find that Southern voice? In entertainment. Where do we really have a Southern voice in entertainment right now, outside of our circle?
Well, just country music coming out of Nashville is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And some of that's authentic, some of that may be... I mean, it don't matter to me if a country music singer comes from New York City if he's good. One of my favorites was Jerry Jeff Walker. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't even know who he is, but at the end of the year, Spotify sends you a thing telling you what percentage of people that you like. I was in the top 0.1% of Jerry Jeff Walker fans. A lot of people don't. He wrote Mr. Bojangles.
Okay.
He's the first guy that took Jimmy Buffett to Key West, Florida. Jerry Jeff Walker is the guy that bought Lukenbach, Texas, and had Waylon and Willie come down. But a lot of people don't know who Jerry Jeff is. I love him. But his quote was, because he's born in New York. Mm-hmm. Not city, but out in country New York. He used to tell him, I got here as quick as I could. I wasn't born in Texas, but I came as quick as I could.
Yeah.
And I think because he was...
Now, he was red dirt? Was he red dirt?
I'm not even sure what that means. Now,
I didn't know any about red dirt until I met Tough.
Well, no, I mean,
it's more of a rock and roll country type of music.
Well, no, we used to call that, what was the name? It was rockabilly. Rockabilly they used to call Bobby Bear and Elvis back in the day. And, it was rockabilly country. I mean, it was rockabilly. Hillbilly rocks, rockabilly, right?
Is now the words red dirt?
That's below my age level.
Your what?
That's below my age level.
Your age level?
Yeah, I'm not technologically efficient enough to pick up on, and I think that's what it means. But no, Jerry Jeff was the outlaw country guy. Mm-hmm. That got to be a big thing, and that was Jerry Jeff's buying Lukenbach and making a recording studio down there. And doing a lot of basically what you're doing here. Jerry Jeff Walker.
Jerry Jeff Walker.
COVID finally got him.
Really?
Well, anytime you died.
Jerry Jeff Walker, American country folk singer. Country music and folk singer. Interesting. He's kind of like, he was from Anita. Well, I will say this, that it says Oneonta. He was from Oneonta, New York. And being from Oneonta, New York, there's more rednecks up there.
My point exactly.
Than there is somewhere down here in the South. So you take that, right? You take that scenario. It's really not, that's why, I guess that's to my point. If you take that scenario, people try to create stereotypes on a geographical area. And it's not geographical.
Because that's the easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's one more... To me, it's one more box the government can put us in to separate us and keep us voting for 2 parties instead of 8 parties. Or I don't know. I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I hadn't heard one in a long time I didn't believe now.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like, these stereotypes are not in a geographic area. They're environmentally driven, right? So. In an area which an environment could be in the north. That could be country similar. All right. Well, so if you're country, if you're somewhat redneck country living outside of a metro area, you get a pass, right? Because you grew up in New York.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. You're not like them hillbillies down there in Tennessee, you know?
Yeah. Nobody's ever thought about that.
Yeah. But so even if you just identify as a Southerner, y'all, we're on your side.
Yeah.
And it don't matter. It's all, at the end of the day, it's what you chose to, it's who you chose to be that day, really. It's who you choose to be every day.
Well, Gary, who do you choose to be every day?
I try to just be the laid back guy that just watches stuff and smiles. You know, have an occasional funny thought about things, and just try to be a good dude and hang out with my friends and my family. You know.
Well, what you asked me about if your eyes are red. Why are your eyes red, Gary?
'Cause they, you know, I smoke. I think I'm allergic to cigarettes.
Oh, really? Allergies? Your allergies are acting up?
I think that's one thing. And then some of those cigarettes make them turn red too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I didn't smoke for 25 years. While you know, when Daddy had to get a job and we had to have insurance and put Mama through college and all that. But when I retired, I went back to my first love, rolling one up.
Rolling one up. So you didn't smoke weed for 25 years?
Well, yeah, because you know we got tested and everything. When I was had a job, Daddy had to keep a job. Mm-hmm. So even as unfair as I don't think it is that somebody can test you at work for something that you might have been involved in the weekend, I really that really gets down to my freedom, where it makes my freedom alert go off. That perhaps that this government that we the people run might be a little overreaching when it comes to what they think they can tell you to do on the weekends. You know.
You know who criminalized? I think, and I had to check that. Is Joe Kennedy? Well, because he's the one that, I think through prohibition and all that, he's the one able the country to start selling alcohol, right? So they didn't want anything else out there that was somewhat a sedative, right? That they couldn't sell or control. And I think that's where that started.
I'm pretty sure what we see in the old medicine show movies that we used to see in the Western, they'd always be some guy coming around with a Curazao, and they used to make fun of him in those movies. Mm-hmm. But going back and looking at it now, it was mostly can oil. It was the oil with marijuana in it that probably did cure a lot of things. It probably was one bottle of it cured most anything you had.
Now, Ken oil had THC?
Canna, C-A-N-N-I.
C-A-N-N-I.
Oil. Ken oil.
Ken oil had THC in it? Mm-hmm. And that was when?
Well, they still make it today. That's where gummies come from, and you have to take the marijuana and they make an oil out of it, and then they infuse that into brownies or food or butter. You put it in butter, you just put it on anything. But you make an oil out of it.
Yeah.
Out of it, and then when it cools right down, then it's got the THC in it, and you put it in your food.
I think if you look at those things in history, usually those things are, money motivated, right?
Without a doubt. It's in verse and chapter. Mm-hmm. I do know that cannabinoids appears in the Bible like 3 times. If they make that's one thing the recipe for the holy oil is made out of. Mm-hmm. And so that's how far it goes back. Is it's actually in Genesis. I'm sure of that at least once, but I know it's in there 3 times.
The holy oil. What was the holy oil?
The holy anointing oil. One of the ingredients in that is
But what did you do with it?
Well, I don't know.
You just drank it?
I'm not even old enough to remember. It was that they rubbed it on the back of the neck, probably, is the way it was explained to me.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah, I'm just impressed that marijuana's in the Bible in a positive light.
Well, I don't see why it wouldn't be.
Well, exactly. And now it's come up to a country where, what I call felony farming will get you put in prison.
We have legalized drug dealers as the pharmaceutical companies. And then we have, drug dealers who are not operating how they're supposed to operate, right? The illegal ones, right? It's the same. To me, it's the same thing.
We're not playing around on this podcast today, or we're getting some truth, ain't we, John?
Yeah, we're getting some truth. Well, just figured we'd dig in deep in something that could be relatable to you.
It is relatable to me, and it's not that there's no humor in it, but it's a sad thing that these people in prison in this country still to this day for something that they could grow in the backyard, and it's really, if you don't own the backyard, it really ain't none of your business what they're doing.
Well, I learned something new too. Is like teas and chocolates, right? Were a big British influence, right? That's why all the teas and the chocolates we have in America now had a very, very strong British influence, and that's what is known. But what I found out is that in this area right here, there's called a Yucca Olo plant. It's a Yucca Olo tea, right? Okay. And this was a tea that was prevalent in this area of the country, right? And it grows like in a holly bush, right? And that's something we're not aware of. But what they're saying is this was the number one tea that the natives used from the Outer Banks all the way down to Florida, right? Back in the day before the British influence came over and gave their, put their teas in the country and so forth. So we have those things that may not be legal, like say a marijuana or whatever. We have things like teas that we don't utilize today, right? Because we don't know about it. You know, we have only known this is where the things come the gospel, and you only think there's a certain type of tea, but there's tea right here growing in our backyard, and we don't even do anything with it. But I think there's somewhat of a resurgence for things like that.
Oh, big resurgence for, if you want to sell something, write the words non-GMO, gluten-free, organic, and put that on their sales. I mean, and now they can go back and raise the prices on, on stuff anymore. So who knows? As far as I'm concerned, there wasn't a mistake that the Tea Party people in Boston, when they got tired of King George, that they went and found one of those tea ships and threw that tea into the harbor. I mean, so there you go, America.
Now, the Boston Tea Party, was that, if you think about that and you think about, I mean, I don't want to offend anybody, but if you think about that, Boston Tea Party, right? Like, how many people died in that fight?
I don't think there was any.
Nobody died?
No, the massacre.
Oh, that's right. I'm getting them mixed up. So Boston Tea Party.
The Tea Party was basically a bunch of vandals that went out and just threw the tea that they didn't want to pay their tax on in the harbor.
When we had tea sitting right here. We didn't need the tea.
Well, but...
You know what I mean?
But the king...
Maybe that's propaganda.
But the king didn't get any... get any money out of that.
Well, follow that story. This is something I just thought about. Follow that storyline. We talk about the tea, right? First thing is tax. Talking tax.
That was the
money
big
driven.
thing, right?
Money driven. We're going to tax. We're going to put our tea in this country, but then we're going to tax that country so we make money.
Right.
When they already had tea here. We already had plants. Those plants, that Yucca Olo plant, is more a healthy tea than any tea you could drink that came from Britain.
I don't doubt that whatsoever. I'm just saying, but if you'd rather have they probably bringing in Chinese tea would be my my thoughts on that. But maybe you want the Chinese tea. If you're willing to pay for it, that's fine. Don't put nobody in jail for drinking that other kind of tea, though.
Yeah.
Don't take away anybody's freedom for growing it.
But tax was a big word. So there was a pattern. When you go back to why they criminalized marijuana, right? And the Kennedys had, Joe Kennedy had helped push selling alcohol, right? Because it's my understanding that the Kennedys get every tax from every scotch that's brought into this country. Did you realize that? That's what I understand. I'm not sure how much truth there is, but that's what I've heard.
I've heard the same thing.
So, and then you put that label on tea, the Boston Tea Party. It's a very similar scenario.
It's very similar. The deal that actually got it was the Reefer Madness movement, which was propaganda from the American government about how bad marijuana was, and it made it made Spanish people. It was where the word never was called marijuana till then in the 30s, and when it was released and as propaganda, it was called marijuana because apparently some Spanish guy killed somebody in Florida, and they blamed it on, and I'm going to do air quotes now, but reefer madness.
Reefer madness?
Yeah, and it caused white women to want to sleep with black men.
Do what?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
No, I mean, there's reefer madness. I mean, you see that there?
I don't see it.
REEFER madness, MADDNESS. It should pull up a poster.
Well, there are different healing elements of that plant, of the cannabis plant, the CBD and so forth that we're utilizing now.
I'm so encouraged. The Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas recently commented that federal ban on marijuana in America, should be done something with because it wasn't right. For instance, it's legal in Colorado, and I don't know who the most liberal state it is. I mean, probably Nevada,
California,
maybe California. I don't know. California's like you ain't supposed to grow your own. You're supposed to buy theirs.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty.
So,
like I went out there years ago. It was out there. You could buy it on Sunset Boulevard back in the day.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was I guess since the hippies, but I think it was actually pushed and beefed up from the Nixon administration because the war protesters was the hippies, I mean, and they were big pot smokers, and they'd be smoking pot at the anti-war rallies, and I think that's why Nixon was so against it and started clamping down on it because it wasn't a big deal. Even on the 37, right along in there, it was, but it wasn't until Nixon until it started being clamped down where these people doing prison time for a joint, and that's just
well,
wrong.
no, Reagan. Remember Reagan? Reagan had the dare. Wasn't there?
And Nancy, just say no.
Or just say no. That's what it was. That was the big push.
Nancy Reagan was just say no.
Yeah. That was a big push back in the day.
That'd solve a lot of problems right there if you always just say no.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, yeah, how about let's just say no to the government?
Oh my God. It's like comedy, It's subjective. Whoever's in office, right? It's subjective. Their decisions are subjective and may not be best for the people.
I'm sure that we have the best government known to man. I really, really believe that.
Oh, there's definitely. It's a great country. And
we make mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we overstep our boundaries a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think that they should have the right to give me a ticket for driving my truck without a seatbelt on.
Mm-hmm.
I think not that you shouldn't. You should. You should drive your truck with your seatbelt on. But you know what? For some reason or another, if you want to, and you paid $60,000 for that truck, and you paid another $1,200 for the tag on that truck, and you pay the insurance on that truck, which is ridiculous too. And now when I drive my truck with gas in it that I had to pay tax on again to go on some roads that y'all been working on for 40 damn years.
Oh, you know what that does, don't you? You know what the seatbelt does. If you focus on the seatbelt, you know what that does.
Well, it gets it where they can tell you to wear a mask next time.
No, it's it protects the car maker
from
liability.
Oh, okay.
Right? So if you put the emphasis on the seatbelt, obviously everybody needs to wear a seatbelt so they can survive a crash, right? But you put the emphasis on the seatbelt and you're in that car and that car wrecks and you don't have your seatbelt on, guess what? In the court of law, the liability there's not a big of a case there. Your liability is a little weakened for the car manufacturer.
By the way, I am a habitual offender on the whole seatbelt thing. 3 times. 3 tickets. I got 3 tickets for not wearing a seatbelt.
How much were the tickets?
$50, $60, and it's not like it's just wrong that they didn't even stop you for such a thing. Mm-hmm. When Alabama passed that law, it's where I was living at the time. It was, you can't wear. I mean, we'll never pull you over just for not having your seatbelt on. It's going to be an addition to, which, okay, then I'm just saying it ain't none of their business. That's all. I ain't saying it ain't a good thing. I ain't saying you shouldn't wear your seatbelt. Please don't misunderstand me on that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it ain't up to the government to tell you got to. So it's a freedom issue to me. But
they need to make some money, maybe. I don't know. It's another way to make money.
I think that's exactly it.
Yeah, it's another way to make some money.
And it's another reason to have it to where they can just pull you over and stop you for basically because they want to.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Well, you may have a point there. You're in Bremen, Georgia. How far is Bremen, Georgia from Charleston, South Carolina?
Somewhere close to 300 miles.
Is that far? What was that? What's that?
About 5 hours.
5 hours?
What it normally takes me, depending on how traffic is in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Which they're working on the roads, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Still.
They've been working on the roads in Atlanta for how long? 30 years?
I worked there. I actually had a job there. It's one of my jobs is I worked on that intersection between 75, 85, and 20 right there by what used to be Old Fulton County Stadium. I did that job for about maybe a year and a half, and then I moved on because construction is hard work.
The unions in Jersey, when I was in Jersey, they controlled the construction. And those damn things, those jobs would take a dang, people would be born and die before they're finished. You know what I'm saying?
I'm pretty sure there's people that's retired off of one little section of highway out there. They started when they got out of high school and retired from there.
Yeah, they retired. I retired from I-85.
Yeah. Where'd you work? I-85.
Hey, maybe that's a good bit.
Maybe.
You know what I'm saying? Like if you're a construction worker or a road worker, it'd be a good bit there.
Yeah, well, we might could do a video with it sometime. I'm excited about the new video we did yesterday.
And I got on the Gary Cargal t-shirt. What is this? What's your t-shirt represent, Gary?
It's 100% genuine moonshine, the original throat sanitizer. In my opinion, the only shot you really need.
What's that? The moonshine?
The moonshine.
That'll knock your head off.
It does, and I'm sure that if you had enough of it, that they can't nothing live in that.
I mean, I've had some stuff. It's pretty tough.
Think about moonshines when people get it. It's about like talking about hot chicken. Mm-hmm. Hot enough ain't good enough. We got to get something that we can't drink, that we can't.
Yeah.
Basically, that's some of it's like Everclear.
Yeah.
And that's too much.
Yeah.
Everclear being a pure alcohol kind of thing. I'd rather have 100 proof as I had 190 proof myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think making moonshine's like a chef. You know what I'm saying? You got to know what you're doing.
And there's somebody else that the government wasn't fair to.
What's that?
The Moonshine Boys.
Moonshine Boys?
Yeah. Back in the day.
Yeah.
There's another one because the Prohibition thing hit. Well, that was in the 20s, right along about the same time that the women was trying to get their right to vote.
I mean, moonshine did do one decent thing for the South. One good thing for the South.
It gave us NASCAR, among other things.
Yeah, it gave you NASCAR.
Look,
Junior Johnson.
And there's probably a lot of us that wouldn't be here if it wasn't for too much moonshine that Grandpa and Grandma had.
Yeah.
I remember hearing my parents talk about my grandparents had a car, which most people didn't, and they'd go out and take the battery out of the truck. It was what it was. It wasn't a car. They'd go take the battery out of the truck and hook up the radio and sit on the front porch with people that drove in so they could listen to the Grand Ole Opry out of Nashville, Tennessee. They could get WSM right there in North Alabama back in, especially at night.
Really?
Yeah. So who knows how much moonshine's affected the thing. And that's another thing. The government really didn't have any right. These good things, I mean, these people died from bad shine back in the days that didn't understand that.
Yeah.
That running it through a radiator with lead holding it together wasn't exactly the way to make
good moonshine.
To make quality throat sanitizer.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people, well, talking about moonshine, a lot of people don't know that Wilkes County, right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, where Junior Johnson is from, that's where a lot of the moonshining was, like the real deal moonshine. That's where the kind of some roots of NASCAR started with Junior Johnson, and there's a couple other players in that circle. And
I worked for CBS for 8.5 years doing automobile races, doing sports shows. The biggest thing that I did, a man named Jim Hunter, who I love to death, ended up being the vice president, at least, of NASCAR. From knowing all that old NASCAR stuff, and I dearly, dearly loved NASCAR back in the day when them guys could get out there and race, and they'd go down to Talladega down there. My brother checked me out of school one morning, and we went down to watch Bobby Isaac bust a 200-mile-an-hour mark in his Dodge Daytona. The NASCAR thing with that, I got to know those people. That came from one moonshine bunch thinking their car was faster than another moonshine bunch, and somebody had enough say, well, bring them out. Let's take them out Saturday night and race them in front of a crowd.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's where American racing came from.
Well, you had the era right off after Junior Johnson. What was Richard Petty? That's when NASCAR really took off.
Richard's daddy Lee was a 3-time champion.
Oh, okay.
That's how Richard got involved in it. Actually, Daddy got in a pretty bad wreck, and Richard stepped in to take care of the family. And being around him was amazing. He's one of the. I've seen that man stand and sign autographs at the racetrack while the sun was setting. And his poor family sitting in the station wagon waiting on him to go to dinner, and he's still signing autographs for people that's handing him things through the fence or throwing something over the fence where he catches it and throws it back over. American hero Richard Petty is.
Yeah. I got his autograph when I was a kid one time.
I ain't no telling how many Richard Petty autographs that I've got stuck away somewhere.
Yeah. And my guy back in the day was Harry Gant.
Loved Harry. I got to work on a movie called Stroker Ace with Burt Reynolds. Burt and Hal Needham
Owned Harry Gant's
the car that
yeah.
Harry drove, and then Skoal U.S. Tobacco was the sponsor of it. And I got to meet a kid named Bobby Bannell, whose daddy was president of Skoal, and he worked on
Skoal Bandit. Wonder where they got the word bandit from.
I wonder where that
That was
came
a pretty
from.
good call on
Exactly.
Burt Reynolds.
It was a great call.
Yeah, the Skoal Bandit.
And it was a very successful car.
Yeah, it was. It was. He should have won more races than he did. He was the best number 2 man in NASCAR.
Well,
I think he had the most seconds in the history of NASCAR, didn't he?
I would think probably Richard Petty has the most seconds in NASCAR. I don't know. I know David Pearson and Richard Petty, they won back-to-back like 61 times or something. One of them was 1, one of them was 2.
Yeah.
And David Pearson edges out Petty by one race on the whole thing. But then, of course, Richard, 200 wins, that won't ever be top.
Yeah.
27 in a year, 10 in a row. I mean, if it's a record about winning, probably best trivia answer. If you don't know, guess Richard Petty.
The next era, I mean, Harry Gant's era was more probably Dale Earnhardt, because Richard was kind of on the tail end. And it was Harry, and then Dale Earnhardt came in and kind of took over. That was when, I think Harry was like right in the middle of that transition.
Yeah, Harry was well established when
Earnhardt came
Dale
in.
came in.
Yeah.
Well, Dale was a trip to be around, though. He really was. Just a little on the edge side, though. But he was also real fun and would laugh and stuff.
He did laugh?
Yes. Yeah. There was a guy from that I was working with CBS that said, "Oh, these guys aren't real athletes." Mm-hmm. He said, "Well, it's not like walking through the NFL." I said, "I get it." I said, "But next time you walk by Teresa Earnhardt over there, pinch her on the butt." Mm-hmm. When Dale's around, you'll see what an athlete is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, he was a fireball.
Oh, hell yeah, he was. Sometimes he was I remember I was in the garage one time when Rusty Wallace threw a water bottle at him.
Really?
He just ducked and laughed.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Cussed a little.
Well, it's a small world. I mean, I remember as a kid, that was a big deal growing up in North Carolina, so forth. So
I grew up 8 miles north of the Talladega race car track.
that's right. I forget about Talladega. That's where Darren's at.
Yeah, and Darren's his house probably 5 miles from it.
Yeah, he's not far at
In
all.
a different direction than where I live.
Yeah, because we interviewed that NASCAR kid, Brett Holmes.
Brett Holmes.
Brett Holmes. He's pretty good.
Yes.
Brett Holmes.
Yes.
And, he could be a big one, I think, maybe,
I think he's going to be.
from what I understand.
I think he's going to be.
Gary, I know we've been talking a lot about a lot of other things. What's going on in comedy right now for you?
For me, I got some. I'm on still on tour with Southern Momma. That's the biggest thing in my
Southern
comedy.
Momma and them.
That's right. Like a corporate marijuana show on the 10th in front of, and then I'll be up for the 11th when we're going to be at Gastonia at the baseball park. I love doing baseball parks.
Yeah.
Brings a couple of things I love together, which is comedy and baseball. Mm-hmm. Then I'm featuring for Tough, Kristen Tough Scott. I get to be her feature, and I think that's a 26th here back here in Charleston.
Charleston, South Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where's the family? Where's Kirby?
Kirby has a dog. Kirby takes care of his puppy and plays his guitar.
Yeah.
Caleb's with the Braves, and I'm hoping they get at least a run at the World Series. Not looking, they got swept by the Dodgers this weekend, so that's not good. But they still got a 2-game lead as of today. They got a 2-game lead in the National League East. You know, I'm just, for people who don't know, my son's a clubhouse manager for the Atlanta Braves. I really, really couldn't be prouder. And Kirby, I love him to death. He's the hardest working man that ain't in show business. Kind of like James Brown, you know.
Talking about Caleb, right? Working for the Braves. Mm-hmm. Does he bring you down there at all?
Father's Day, I got to go.
You did?
And he got me a signed baseball from Clayton Kershaw. Yeah. Which I always been even when I was a little boy, a big Dodgers fan. So he got that for me for Father's Day and brought me to the game. So that was great. And we don't see him. We don't see him when it's baseball season. He's involved in his work. Mm-hmm. And he's a good boy. He calls his mama.
He does call his mama?
Yeah. Yeah, he sent me a text this morning with a song he wanted me to listen to, so that's good.
And what's his day-to-day like, Caleb's day-to-day?
I mean, I really don't know because I know he goes in early because he's responsible for getting the uniforms washed and hung up and everything. And if a player needs something, in particular for that day, he figures out where to get it and get it delivered over there and that sort of thing. So that's all kind of fun. And it gets me some really cool T-shirts sometimes.
Really?
Yeah, I got an official T-shirt and a hoodie from the Braves. Yeah, so if I wanted to go out and impersonate a player sometime,
Now, who still owns that team? Who owns the Braves still? It's not Turner, is it?
Well, he's dead.
Yeah, I know that, but is it a corporation or?
I would imagine it's a corporation. I never hear anything on it. I really don't know.
Interesting.
I really don't know. I know now it's more of a corporate thing than it is whatever Ted Turner's whim is. Kimmy's back in school with the children, and who knows where this whole COVID thing is gonna. I know she hates being at home and virtual teaching.
Yeah.
And I remember reading something that's been several years ago where they tested the most germy surfaces in America, and the kindergarten teacher's desk was right up there on top with one of the most germ-filled places,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but she's a cleaner. She's clean free.
Yeah. Well, the family's good. Kirby's home working. Caleb's working for the Braves. Mama's teaching.
Yep.
It's all good, huh?
Yeah, and I'm hanging out over at Bang Productions.
Bang Studios,
That's
here.
Right here.
And I told you we got that sign. We can change this sign out. Bang Live.
Uh-huh.
Right? They can be the Bang Live where you could do your own show here.
All right.
We want to do lives with the Bang Live thing, but and I also got that with a thought of somebody doing other shows.
Okay.
In the Bang Live studio.
Okay. Maybe I could go get my old neighbor to come over and I'll sit here and we'll talk about old times or something.
Well, look for Gary across the country, Southern Momma and them comedy tour. A lot in the Atlanta area, a lot in the Florida area. Where else you go? Well, North Carolina area? Tennessee. A lot in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And this is outside of Southern Momma, so if you see his name, Gary, comedian Gary Cargal, go check him out.
Yeah, I do other stuff, but, man, I love going out with Southern Momma and them, so that's family right there.
Yeah, we've been doing it a long time. We've been doing Southern Momma a long time.
Yep.
How long? 5 years?
Over 5. I think, this is August. If August is past, that would have been 5 years, I think.
Our first show was July 28th.
Okay, so.
2016.
So it's about 5 years in the month.
Mm-hmm.
And today's, so yeah. I do that thing that started my show about how many years I've been married. 33 years, 9 months, and 2 days. Because we got married on New Year's Eve, so I just, however many years, and then you just do the date. So there you go. So I don't really sit around and count the days, but
Cool. Well, I hope somebody got something out of this and some information. Y'all can fact check.
Yeah.
Everything needed fact check, but I think we were in line with a few things, maybe a couple things we maybe didn't hit exactly right, but I hope everybody enjoyed the Unimpressed Podcast. It's comedian Gary Cargal. I'm John Edmonds Kozma, the CEO of Bang Productions.
Bang! I like that.
That's old...
Yeah, but it was good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Bang!